So I was watching a rig rundown video today for Blink-182, and a point was made that I strongly believe is not talked about enough. And that point is we're using modeling rigs wrong. And when I say we're using modeling rigs and modelers wrong, what do I mean? If all your modeling presets are based on the song with different amps, different EQs, different effects, your sound engineer hates you. Not because modelers are bad, but because you're using it wrong. Modeling rigs and presets should be set up just like a real amp and pedals. Why doing less is going to make you sound better through front of house. The point of option paralysis when it comes to modelers is a very good one. Just because you have so many different amps, so many different effects, different things that you can do with each preset, are you actually going to do that for each preset? Or should you? A lot of people will argue, well, I'm only going to use 1 to 2 amps, 3 amps at max anyways. And others are like, well, they're all there, I should probably use them. Or you sit there looking at all the different amps and they all sound good, and then you end up wasting an hour because you're trying to make a patch for the song and you just don't know which amp sounds the best. These unlimited options are killing your creativity. I know it sounds like a paradox, but it's true. Different amps per song, different gain structures, different effects, different EQs are all getting in the way of the song. Front of house isn't mixing the band anymore. They're fighting your preset changes from song to song. If front of house can't trust your presets and your tone, not jumping around from one song to the other, they're not going to be happy, and it's not really ever going to sound the best. Let's be honest, if you showed up to the gig and you had a deluxe reverb for one of your slower songs, and you had a JCM 800 for one of your big riffier songs, and then you had a Vox because you were doing a U2 cover, and then also you had a Soldano just to get that grit right, you wouldn't do that. You're not bringing all of those amps to a gig. You, sir, are not Joe Bonamassa. You would also either be kicked out of the band or laughed out of the venue for trying to bring that many amps to do a 30-minute opening set. But there are a lot of people that do that every night when it comes to their modeling rig, and it's adding a lot of inconsistencies. What I mean by that is perceived loudness. It's how our ears are hearing what is actually coming out of the speakers.
But Jordan, I make sure all of my presets are exactly the same amount of LUFS and dB in my DAW before I press export on my preset.
Great, that's fine, but it doesn't help with perceived loudness. See, we as humans hear significantly more. We're more sensitive in the 300 hertz to about 3 or 4K. Anything below that, we kind of feel it. Anything above that, we don't perceive it the same. Also, whenever you get older and you start losing your hearing, that higher end is what you start hearing first. So 300 to 3 to 4K is what we perceive as loudness the most. We're more sensitive to it. If you're making a preset and you're looking at where it's showing up in LUFS and dB and you're trying to measure that out in your gain structure, but you actually have a lot of low end in there, whenever you go to the venue and front of house starts cutting some of that low end out or putting a high pass filter on, well, then it's not actually going to be perceived the same way. See, once we feel and we can hear that on that low end, but we start taking it out, then your volume is actually going to dip. There's not as much there on the low end that was carrying what you were looking at on your reading. The meters measure energy. Our ears measure loudness. And where does the guitar live? In that mid-range, in that 300 to 4K range. So we are the ones on the stage that are most affected by it. This is why switching around amps in your presets is such a problem. All of those different sounds are going to be picked up by the ear differently, even if the meter is reading the same. So your sound guy is going to know when you switch because all of a sudden, it's poking too hard in front of everybody else, or where did the guitar go? It's supposed to be a solo. So every time you're changing, the ear is going to be picking it up differently, even if the meter doesn't move. See, one amp or one sound, one preset is not a limitation. If you had a great amp before, or you were saving up and you got that real amp and you were able to gig it out and use it to its full potential, it wasn't a limitation. It's just a great amp. we should be looking at our presets in a very similar way. The way that I look at my presets between bass tones is I usually have one bass tone that can really do the edge of breakup thing, so roll off the volume and get a nice clean, or I can kind of push it into that overdrive, and then something that's a little bit more gainy. So I usually would go with some kind of Marshall or a jump Marshall setting to get more gain out of those amps. You don't need 12 amps. You really ideally only need about 2 or 3. When you pick 1 or 2 main sounds, this EQ curve stays consistent between all of your songs and your changes. Your clean, your edge of breakup, your crunch, all of those live in a very similar place. And so front of house isn't having to chase you on the fader constantly because they all are related. They sound related to one another. Even if, well, this one was recorded with a Marshall and I'm using a pushed Fender sound right now. There's tons of pedals that can kind of get you in that range. But because you're using the same amp or the same preset, you're going to have a very similar EQ curve and live and feel cohesive from song to song. This also means whenever you click in a boost and actually go louder, front of house goes, that is louder. I can then push it up if need be, or that boost covers it enough. He's not constantly running around trying to figure out what your next change is going to do. The other thing with front of house is they don't have time to be chasing you around. Most of us don't even get to have a consistent front of house guy if we're out gigging a lot. Now, if you're at like a church on Sundays and that's familiar to you as you know your sound engineer, that's great. Or if you're with a band that has a consistent sound engineer, bravo to you. It's awesome to have a consistent sound engineer, but a lot of us know the struggle of being on stage with an iPad, trying to mix while also trying to listen to the click track through your ears. It's not a fun experience. It actually definitely takes years off of your life with stress, anxiety, and high blood pressure. Ask me how I know. Also, we know that these front of house guys are usually not the most calm individuals when we get to the venue. They're very reactive. We know this from experience. We also know that after a while, that sound guy might just not care anymore and stop mixing altogether. That can also happen. So don't be the reason why your band doesn't sound great is because front of house is tired of trying to make sure you're not too loud or too quiet in the mix. Now, what I am not saying is that something like snapshots should not be utilized, or whatever your monitor likes to call them. I'm not saying that. Use them. Use them like you would use a channel amp switcher on an actual amp. You have clean, you have crunch, you have solo, you have your big overdrive. Use those, but keep them within the same family. Same amp, same EQ, same EQ curve. You're just controlling the changes from your end with these snapshots. Now, I've been doing this for a while whenever I've been making my presets, and I've heard other people talk about it. I know I'm not the first person to bring it up, but as someone who has done a lot of front of house work and a lot of fronting from stage and playing guitar, I understand the struggles for both. The way that I have always done this is I make templates. So when I was doing the country cover band for the last 3 years, I had 2 main sounds that I used. I had my Vox AC15 and Deluxe Reverb combo that I used as my core tone, probably for 80% of the songs. And I used a jumped Plexi Marshall for the others, for some of the more 80s tunes that we were doing, or some of like the drop D, drop C sharp songs that we were doing as well. Yes, country music does have drop C sharp. Now in these templates, what I would do is I would make a bass core tone that would have the effects I would use most of the time saved in there, and create more of a classic clean crunch, overdrive, solo, ambient settings, kind of like how my presets are that I make that I sell to you guys. But what I would do is then copy those and make a template. I would copy it and make it per song. So I would change the tap tempo, say there was a chorus in this song that I don't use in others, say this one has a ping pong delay. I would add all those, and I could take certain blocks out. So it's like, all right, this one I'm not going to use a tube screamer on. I'm just going to kind of use a clon and a boost. I have more DSP to add that chorus in. And then you can go through all of your presets and make sure that they do what they need to do per song without having to completely change every aspect of the preset and the rig to match whatever was being used in the studio. This also really helped whenever I had to put poly pitch effects in there as well, like the drop pedal or the poly capo inside of Helix. it would still have the same EQ, the same feel, and I could just get rid of some effects that were taking up more DSP, pop in the poly capo, drop tune without necessarily having to change the tuning on my guitars. That helped a ton with keeping it consistent, but also feeling very different to the audience or to the song or to what we were doing with those presets, but still not completely fluctuating so much that front of house was affected. One of the things I like to do that can help you out for some of you Helix users is I would go into Command Center, and some of the effects, like I would always keep a boost on the far right of my board. I like having consistency from preset to preset so that I know without looking what something should be, or like a solo boost that I use a lot. I know exactly where that's going to be on every preset. It stays the same. Delays and verbs are in the same spot. Drives are in the same spot. Boost is in the same spot. And so if I had some free blocks in a preset, I could actually go up there, and what I would do is just type out if I was having a hard time, because we had anywhere from 40 to 60 odd songs in our repertoire that we pull out at any given time. That was just one band. At one point, I was playing with 3 different acts that all roughly had 30 songs each. So my on-hand knowledge of music was over 100 songs that I was supposed to just be able to pull out of nowhere. So what I would do is I would go into my presets in Command Center, and anywhere that there was a blank spot or where my solo boost was, and I know that's my solo boost, I would go into Command Center, rename that spot whatever the progression was for the chorus, or if it was a bridge that I always forgot where it went to in the bridge, I could go in, type out my progression really quickly and what key it was in, so I knew exactly what to do if I was having an oh crap moment on stage and just blanking on what came next. That is something I really like to have, especially whenever you have so many songs in your repertoire that sometimes you just kind of forget where you're going in the song. If your rig stays familiar, front of house will stay confident and your tone will stay consistent. When it comes to the option paralysis problem, that's not necessarily a problem with the modelers. That's a problem with us, the end user, and the guitar player, because we love having options. When everything is possible, it's hard to stay committed. So limiting your rig down to what you deem most important keeps you confident, it keeps you familiar, it keeps you consistent. And then you can have your own tone within the plethora of sounds that are within your modeler. The audience doesn't care how clever your preset is. They just want to see and hear you be confident. If you want a modeler to work for you live, stop treating it like a museum or an art piece, something that you're trying to show off. Nobody else cares. Now, will there be tone peepers out there in the audience trying to see what you're doing? Absolutely. Why do you think I have a YouTube channel? But the normal audience goer does not give a care in the world about what your preset is doing or what amp you're modeling. Build it like a real rig. Get familiar with the layout. Get familiar with the pedals. Know what the different combinations do. Know where your snapshots are. And keep it consistent throughout the night per each group. So for me, with my Still Feel Like Your Band, the Mayor tribute that I have, my Helix preset is in that vein. Every single song is based on the same amps. When I was doing country covers, I had 2 presets that every single song was based off of one of those 2 presets, and I used that over and over again throughout the rest of the night. Use fewer amps, use reusable templates, and you will keep your perceived loudness consistent. The sound engineer will trust you, the band will stay tighter, and I guarantee you everyone is going to be happier with you. And if this hits a nerve, you probably needed to hear it. At the end of the day, it's not about what you, your rig, your preset can do. It's about how reliable it really is. Build your modeler like a real rig, like a real amp and pedals. Have less guessing, have more fun, and be more confident. My name is Jordan Allen Clark. I make videos like this for guitar, Helix Stadium, John Mayer, and John Mayer related activities. I'm heading out to NAMM here next week. If there's anything that you are excited for to see at NAMM or want me to specifically go check out and make a video or content about, leave it in the comments below. I'd love to hear you guys. And for my next Helix Stadium preset video, what amp would you like to hear? Do you want me to show you that drop tuned preset I had with a jump Marshall? Or do you want to hear something like a matchless? Do more of a Dumble thing? Let me know what you would like to hear as a preset, and maybe I'll start getting working on it for you. My name is Jordan Allen Clark. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one.